All right. So just a few minutes ago, I got a text from my friend Pat. Shout out to Pat. He watches the channel regularly, has a good tailgate at Levi Stadium. He saw that the Cleveland Browns released Dalvin Tomlinson today, start of the new league year, big defensive tackle. And he takes a screenshot of the tweet from the Browns and he sends me this text. Wasn't this the dude that was in the Niners backfield every single down in the game 2 years ago in Cleveland? And I said, yes, that's who the 49ers should want. That second part's my opinion. I really think that Dalvin Tomlinson would fit nicely on the 49ers defensive line. We could talk about the larger plan. I think that we've explained different things at different times through all these shows. You can have the overarching explanation for you here, but the draft is where they're building this team. It's what the Buffalo Bills have done successfully. It's what the Philadelphia Eagles have done successfully. It's what the Rams have done successfully, complete with cost resets in all three of those franchises. So the 49ers are doing that. They've shed salary and they are hoarding draft picks. They can do this on a cost-controlled basis. But out of all the positions, and we're going to take a look at the roster very soon, the one that is dangerously thin on talent right now the most is defensive tackle. And I think that's where, yes, there's so many defensive tackles coming up in this draft. 41 of them, I keep on saying that, but 41 got invited to the combine this year, only 25 the year before. I mean, the strength of this draft is the defensive line. I get it. If I were running the 49ers, though, I would bring in the type of player John Middlecoff loves to call a war daddy, somebody that can not only fix the immediate issues that sunk this team in 2024, and I think run defense was at the top of the list, but also somebody that can help shepherd in the future because you're obviously moving to a lot of young players. I think anybody with a brain right now, two eyes and a brain, can see that the 49ers are on their way to making some defensive line draft picks. So I think the way that you bridge that gap is through somebody like Dalvin Tomlinson, released by Cleveland today. Let me give you a rundown of what's happened. Tomlinson released by Cleveland. Cooper Kupp has been released by the Rams. Already did a video on that. Actually, 2 videos today. We've been talking about Cooper Kupp. The Jets have released their Pro Bowl linebacker, CJ Mosley. And this is interesting because Robert Saleh obviously coached Mosley in New York, and Mosley was a very good linebacker for the Jets, just like Jamie Sherwood was a good linebacker for the Jets. Quincy Williams, a good linebacker for the Jets. I mean, that was a linebacker factory in New York, kind of like San Francisco's been a linebacker factory over the past few years. So maybe Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans have had something to do with that. A lot of people asking me, should the 49ers go get Mosley? A, there's a lot of belief in D. Winters from what I've gathered. B, Greg Papa, I came on KMBR today, and we had a discussion on the radio. Greg Papa thinks that Luke Gifford is going to push for a linebacker 2 spot. That's who the 49ers signed the other day. He saw some time as a linebacker in Tennessee, but he was mainly a special teams ace. But I haven't watched the full film on Luke Gifford, the 49ers free agent pickup the other day. But Greg was swearing to me today on the radio that this guy plays fast. I've seen the highlights on him. I saw his interception against Joe Burrow last year in Nashville. That was, I'm in Nashville actually right now, but I saw the clip. It was at Nissan Stadium. It was here. And I don't have a full opinion yet on Luke Gifford, but the questions have been about CJ Mosley. And a lot of players on the wrong side of 30, I would immediately dismiss, especially in this free agent class when you see how much guys are going for. But CJ Mosley was playing some of his best football up until 2023. Now, toe and neck injuries limited him to 4 games in 2024. So anytime I read about a neck injury, that's obviously very serious. And then I read about a toe injury and I think about Patrick Willis. And he played that linebacker position, and it was the toe injury, the turf toe, just wouldn't go away, that ultimately caused Patrick Willis to retire after that 2014 season. So I don't know what kind of health CJ Mosley is in. if he can play like he did in 2023, well, then I think the league would pick up on that and he'd be offered $15 million a year to play somewhere. When Dre Greenlaw only managed 35 snaps last year and he got, what was it, 35 million over 3 years with Denver? It's a lot of money. I mean, free agency is coming so expensive this year. You could see why the 49ers are not in the bidding for really any of these players at these price points right now. When it comes to players with true name recognition, it's almost a certainty, it seems right now, that you're paying in the double digits, which is wild to me. I mean, we always knew that free agency was expensive. There was a markup that you paid for the name recognition, for the perceived stability. And I say perceived because there are misses even in free agency. If people were slam dunks, then the 49ers would still have Javon Hargrave on the football team. It's a risk anywhere you go, via the draft or free agency, but there is a little bit more peace of mind when you do acquire a player through free agency, since you already have his NFL tape. But the thing is that peace of mind, whatever you're getting through acquiring a veteran this year, is costing a premium, like a 300% premium. It's insanely more expensive than it's been in prior years. The best examples are somebody like Aaron Banks going for $77 million. I mean, this was a bottom half guard, and he's being paid as the third highest paid left guard in all of football, $19.2 million per year. Jalen Moore was backup offensive lineman for the 49ers. He's now going to be protecting Patrick Mahomes' blindside at $15 million per year with very little starting experience. I mean, I said this morning, it wasn't that long ago, it was like 4 months ago, where Jalen Moore was playing some tight end. Remember when George Kittle missed the game against Seattle? So the 49ers were short on tight ends. That was a huge problem last season, especially when Kittle was out. So they lined up their backup left tackle at tight end. He even ran a pass pattern in that game. That's when I was sure that Kyle Shanahan had lost his fastball for the 2024 season. And the 49ers will hope he gets it back. I think that part of the reason he lost it is because of a lot of the personnel struggles that the 49ers saw. It was tough to call plays for the 2024 49ers. But when he had Jalen Moore out running pass patterns, and it happened against the Seattle Seahawks, and Seattle paid absolutely no attention to him. And basically the 49ers were playing 4-on-5 in terms of the eligible, since it was just such a wasted route. When that happened, I knew that this season is not going to turn around for the 49ers. They showed that sign of life against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I think that was the star players. That was Purdy, that was McCaffrey, that was Kittle, willing the 49ers to win. The very next week, Jalen Moore was playing tight end for San Francisco in a couple snaps. 4 months later, 4 months after that, Jalen Moore is Patrick Mahomes' left tackle, protecting Mahomes' blindside. And Mahomes and Chris Jones had to restructure their contracts because the Jalen Moore deal was big enough to push up against Kansas City's salary cap space. So NFL comes at you really, really fast. Speaking of that, how about a 49ers salary cap update? And then we've been speaking of Brock Purdy. He got a nice little paycheck today of over $800,000. So did Dominick Purdy. I am working on the 2026 salary cap sheet. That's exciting because we're going to have more of a future look moving forward. But for now, I can show you the updated 2025 sheet. We now know, since the new league year started, the exact amount of salary cap credits that the 49ers have gotten. A few million more than we expected. We also know dead money hits because the 49ers have designated 2 of their players for post-June 1st releases. You can only use 2 post-June 1st releases every single season, and the 49ers use theirs on Javon Hargrave and on Malik Collins. So that means they spread the dead money hit out into the future. Only some of it hits this season for those players. So $1.36 million, the dead money hit for Malik Collins. And for Javon Hargrave, they take $7.38 million this year. Now, mind you, dead money is very misunderstood. It's money that the 49ers are going to have to owe against the cap anyway. They're just manipulating when that salary cap bill comes due. Anyway, dead money is accounted for. Everybody's accounted for. Deebo Samuel's been moved down into the dead money column. He is off of the books. So this is my salary cap report. The 49ers, with a 53-man projection, have about $62.9 million of salary cap space left this season. Now, a few things will happen. They're going to have to pay the draft class. The draft class is set to cost $14.2 million. So you're going to subtract $14.2 million from $62.89. So I will just do that right now on our calculator. All right, that brings it down to about 48.7 or 49 million, fitting for the 49ers. Then right now you've got about 36 spots filled. So even if all 11 players from the draft class make it for the 49ers onto this team, you still would have about 6 roster spots needed to be filled, and not all 11 will make it. So San Francisco still needs to make more signings. Say that they have to make about 8 or 9 more signings. Let's average $2 million cap hits for those signings, right? Okay, yeah, let's say about 15 million more in space that the 49ers are going to need to account for. So we'll go 15 million more minus 15. There you go. 33.7 million left over for the 49ers. Then they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. I think that if they backload it like they have before would also would give the 49ers obviously some cap relief in the near term. So Purdy's number probably 15 million, not anything close to 50, 55 or 60 million for this year. So you would take 10 more million off of this total. That'd bring you to about 23 million. But then you could restructure George Kittle, or giving him an extension. You could restructure Fred Warner, give George Kittle an extension, and I think it would bring the 49ers back up in 2025 salary cap space. And I would estimate they finished this season at about 40 million in salary cap space, even after all their expenditures. 40 million left over. This is how the 49ers have managed their finances over the past several seasons. Even when they were spending more on free agents and doubling down on extensions for Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, they were leaving $40 million of salary cap space as a buffer to carry over into the following season, because the expenditures only grow. Contracts only become more valuable against the salary cap year after year when you backload them. And that's how the 49ers have structured all of these big deals. So they have tried to ensure that they have this money to carry over for future seasons. And because of that, there's a lot of money in void years. That means that they are pushing a lot of cap hits as far down the road as possible so that they can maintain the salary cap space now, because they believe the cap space now is more valuable than the cap space later due to the salary cap inflating on a year-over-year basis. So that is how the 49ers are operating. We now have a look at the books, and we can see that the same thing is happening again, except that the 49ers have reined back the cash spend because they're going for draft cost controlled efficiency, just like the Rams, just like the Philadelphia Eagles, just like the Bills. I think Albert Breer recently made the point that the Bills had like $65 million in dead money because they moved on from so many guys last year. They had all those accelerations hit their books. Well, the 49ers now, where are they at in terms of the dead money? 85 million, even more than Buffalo last year. That means that the 49ers have been shedding a lot of salary and just paying the salary cap charges that were going to come anyway. They're going to pay them this year because they have the room to pay them this year. Books are going to be a little bit more clear moving forward. That's more useful for people following the team than it is for people actually running the team. Dead money isn't as big of a deal as a lot of people make it, but those following the team who don't really understand dead money, I guess because it's called dead money, it doesn't sound good. They typically like that number to be lower, but that's exactly where the 49ers are. All right, let's talk about Brock Purdy and Dominick Purdy. They both got big bonuses. Take a look at this. The NFL every year, this is part of the collective bargaining agreement, comes out with performance-based pay distributions based on guys who outplayed their contract. So speaking of Jamien Sherwood, he's at the very top of this list. He got $1.092 million in bonus, and plus he got a big contract from the Jets just a few days ago. So who else is on this top 25 list? Well, checking in as the top rookie, Dominick Purdy, the 49ers starting right guard, $898,036 as a bonus coming Dominick Purdy's way. And then if you scroll a little bit further down to number 16, you will find Brock Purdy, $857,842 comes Brock Purdy's way. So you might have been able to tell from my salary cap sheet that Brock Purdy has already gotten a raise due to the Pro Bowl selection in 2023. It used to be that his 2025 cap hit was only about $1 million. Best deal in all of football. I still think that it's a tremendous deal, probably still the best deal in football. But the 2023 Pro Bowl appearance earned him a big-time bump up for 2025, even before this new contract. $5.24 million is now his 2025 cap hit, thanks to the rise in base salary. On top of that, the $800,000+ that he's going to receive as one deposit as a bonus for outplaying his contract in 2024. So congratulations to Brock Purdy and Dominick Purdy. They both have earned their big bonuses on this first day of the new league year. And all of that money, every single piece of cash that a player gets, has to be reflected in the salary cap. So that 800-something thousand for Purdy, the 800-something thousand for Dominick Purdy, both of those totals are going to hit the 49ers cap, I believe, in this cycle, unless it was recorded in last cycle. No, they've already carried over space from last year. So it's going to hit in the 2025 cycle, and the 49ers will be $1.6 million poorer against the salary cap for it. But it doesn't appear that they have cap issues. They're just reining back the cash spend right now. And I think that nobody is complaining about the extra money that both Purdy and Dominick Purdy have earned. Anyway, why don't we talk about the fact that the 49ers are still short at that defensive tackle position? I can illustrate this on the roster. And hey, I've made some improvements to this depth chart to better illustrate where the 49ers are and what their offseason plan is, because the national media is getting this very, very wrong as far as how the 49ers are operating this offseason. They're acting as if San Francisco is a powerhouse in 2024, which they obviously weren't. They finished 6-11. They had some major problems as a football team. And they're acting like the entire core of the team has left in free agency or has been cut, which is just not the case. First, though, I do have to point out that defensive tackle is looking extremely thin for the 49ers right now. And that's why I have to point out that Dalvin Tomlinson is available. We're going to talk about Dalvin here in a few minutes, but highlighting the defensive tackle position, the 49ers have a blank space right here where Malik Collins' name used to be. I have Jordan Elliott listed as a starter. I can also list Kevin Givens as a starter, but both of these guys have been rotational pieces for the 49ers in the past. These aren't starting caliber war daddy defensive tackles for the 49ers. They're fine pieces for the 49ers, but I'll get to my core player theory in a second. I think the 49ers need a true core player at defensive tackle. Even if they draft somebody really good, I think it would be healthy for them to shepherd that player into the league with a veteran, which is, again, why I point out that Cleveland has released Dalvin Tomlinson. You've also got Evan Anderson, and you have Kalia Davis in that defensive tackle room for the 49ers. So that's thin. Now, look at what else I've done with the rest of this roster. I put core players in yellow. This will show you that the 49ers roster as a whole is nowhere near in as bad of shape as a lot of national media members who aren't paying attention make it out to be. The goal in the NFL, and this is the only realistic goal you could possibly have in the NFL, is to have a A-list core player at every single position group. And I think that offensive line and defensive line are bigger position groups. So I think that you need two, preferably one defensive end core player and one defensive tackle core player. On the offensive line, I think that an exterior offensive lineman and a center should be your two core players, or one of the guards, but one exterior lineman, one interior lineman. I think that sets you up for the best possible scenario of success in the NFL, because it is impossible in this league to fill out a 53-man roster with A-list recognizable core players. It's just not going to happen, right? The roster is too big. But if you can distribute the star power and the leadership, the oomph that you're getting from good players across the entire roster at all of the positions that I just listed, with two each on the offensive line and the defensive line, you are then set up to build cost efficiently through the draft and through bargain bin free agency around those players. So Here is the illustration of where the 49ers core players are at. They're all in yellow right now. Brock Purdy is a core A-list piece at quarterback. Christian McCaffrey is a core A-list piece at running back. I'm not giving anybody a core A-list designation at wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk should have had that, but he fumbled the way that he handled the contract negotiation last year. The way that he started playing for the 49ers over the first 7 games wasn't befitting of a core list player. He still has a chance to earn that back if they don't trade him and he shows up and recovers from this ACL and MCL and looks really good. The 49ers would really like that if he stays on this football team because they need a player highlighted in yellow in the receiving room. But right now, they don't have a core A-list player solidified at the receiving room. They definitely have one at tight end with George Kittle. They have one on the offensive line with Trent Williams, but they don't. This is why I was in favor of signing Drew Dahlman or really going big at center. Obviously, the 49ers didn't, but they don't have that core in the middle. Maybe Dominick becomes a core player. We talk about him getting the $800,000 plus raise today, but it's one of those things where the 49ers, it's precarious along the offensive line. They have one. I think they need 2. On the defensive line, they obviously have Nick Bosa as a core player. Then I say they need a defensive tackle. You know, this team, when they were knocking on the door of the Super Bowl, they had somebody playing inside who was a core player. They had Eric Armstead in that 2023 season. Before, they had DeForest Buckner in 2019. Now they don't have a core player defensive tackle, which is why I must again remind you that Cleveland released Dalvin Tomlinson today. I'm going to keep on going back to that. Moving down to linebacker, you've got Fred Warner as a core player. Cornerback, they made Deommodore Lenoir that this past season with his extension. And then, I initially highlighted Malik Mustafa, and then Mike said, I don't think that Malik Mustafa deserves that yet. Let's see another season from Malik Mustafa. And I said, okay, I agree. And I erased the core player designation from Malik Mustafa. That is headed in the right direction, though. I mean, he was awesome his rookie year. But based on the overarching structure of what I just showed you, that's what the 49ers have to do. Like, they have to make sure that the core spots are filled, and then they're ready to take big swings and a lot of swings in this coming draft. And they already hit the draft last year, and then they'll be fine. I mean, in another way, like if you want to look at team building from a more performance-based lens, take a look at this. This is what I put up on Twitter. A lot of people are confused about the core and different signings and different moving pieces, and I get it. The roster is big. Fine. Just look at it through right here. I'm circling with my cursor. There are 4 key areas where the 49ers were terrible. Well, they were woeful last season. Those 4 key areas were run defense. They were number 29. The short yardage run game, where they were number 31. So that's one's on offense, one's on defense. Separation, that's an offensive stat. They were number 32. And special teams, they're number 32. Newsflash, there are only 32 teams in the league. So performance-wise, take a look at these 4 areas and see how bad the 49ers were. And then ask yourself, as this offseason progresses, when all of this offseason's work is done, how many of these 4 areas will the 49ers have improved in? That's what you have to honestly ask yourself. Like, just keep on remembering these 4 things. Because if they improve all 4, the 49ers will be better than they were in 2024. I get it. That's not saying much because they finished 6-11 in 2024, but that's precisely my point. And I would like to share that to all the national media members who don't seem to understand what the 49ers are doing here. It's time to let go of the idea that 2024 was a functional year for the 49ers. Because it clearly wasn't when they ranked number 29 in run defense, number 31 in short yardage running, number 32 in separation, and dead last in special teams. I mean, their performance literally demanded a significant overhaul. So what the 49ers have done so far this offseason, the reason I say the plan is clear, is that they've weeded out the players who were going to cost way too much money, who weren't going to be highlighted in yellow, because the performance wasn't there to justify paying all those guys. I mean, the amount of players that left in free agency, the 49ers didn't extend, that amounted to more than $250 million of total contractual money. You guys just saw the salary cap plan. It's a $280 million cap. It was essentially an entire salary cap's worth of salary that wouldn't be fitting of core status. Deebo Samuel lost his core status this past season with his poor play for the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers decided to keep the players who they believe will return to A-list production, even if they didn't deliver A-list production in 2024. They believe Christian McCaffrey is going to return to that. They believe, I think Brock Purdy wasn't an A-list level. He was number 7 in QBR, so he was still really solid. They think with a better cast around him, he could go right back to number 1 efficiency. They, we'll see what they believe of Brandon Ayuk. If they can't trade him, and I know the injury befuddles this, makes it a little bit more confusing in terms of Brandon Ayuk. But if they believe that Brandon Ayuk can get back the core level A-list status and get that yellow highlight over his name here, then all the more power to him, all the more power to them. That will be a big need fulfilled for the 49ers. They think that Nick Bosa is going to be back there once he's healthy for a full season. Fred Warner already was there. They think that Malik Mustafa can deliver on being a core list player. That is the structure that the 49ers are working around. Everything else that they do, whether it be the 11 picks in the draft, the 5 free agent signings that we've seen so far this year, the waiver claim of Trey Tomlinson, that's all filling around the core. That's how an NFL roster is built. You've got your base 7, 8, 9 guys. The more, the better. If a guy proves that he's an A-list player and that he deserves to be paid that way by this team, you will expand the A-list core as the salary cap expands. But you have that centerpiece. Those are the studs, right? That's the structural foundation of the team. And then beyond that, you fill in on a cost-efficient basis. And the best way, the most cost-efficient way to build a football team is through the draft. It definitely isn't through the first wave of free agency, which is why the 49ers have sat it out this year. And the 49ers have, in a way, I think, tried to extend the draft artificially, artificial creation of draft picks. I think that's what the teal here essentially has been with these signings. Look at somebody like Jason Pinnock. That's not going to be a lucrative deal for Jason Pinnock. We already know that Trey Tomlinson is a rookie contract that the 49ers have claimed off of waivers from the Rams. Luke Gifford is probably only going to be a couple million a year. Richie Grant, we already know that's a $1.5 million contract for the season. So also comparable to the price of a rookie deal. They signed Trey Brown today. He was hurt a lot of last year. That's not going to be expensive for the 49ers. Demarcus Robinson, a guy who had 505 receiving yards last year, but the 49ers have managed to grab him for only $9.5 million over 2 years. So that's $4.75 million for a second tier wide receiver in this football league, coming off of his best year. The most expensive player has been the blocking tight end, Luke Farrell, who's about $7 million per year. But as you can see, there are none of these $20-30 million per year expenditures that we've been seeing around the rest of the league. So the 49ers are erring more toward the Moneyball cost-efficient side, which more closely resembles the value that you're going to try to find in the NFL draft. Because you don't want to pay non-A-list players A-list money. That's what they were spending this offseason getting rid of, is the non-A-list players who were being paid A-list money. The guys who weren't highlighted in yellow, who were being paid as if they were highlighted in yellow. So they've pared it down to this, and now it's time to regrow. Now it's time to fill in with a better cost structure around the players highlighted in yellow. I think the plan is clear. I don't think there's all too much complicated about it. I think there's 2 ways to look at it. It's through the lens of the roster, and then it's through the lens of performance. And the performance lens might resonate more with some people because they were just so damn bad at 4 spots. And I think part of the problem is that the national media doesn't watch the 49ers closely enough. So they lazily assume, because this team was in the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl year after year, they lazily assume that they were just some kind of powerhouse last year with no questions answered, or with no questions asked. And the questions haven't been answered either. But they think, okay, just because all these guys have left, the 49ers are going to get worse. Well, I mean, it really was hard to get worse than they did in these 4 metrics last year. And these are, the reason I like to look at run defense, I like to look at how well you could run the ball when you only need a yard, when the defense knows you only need a yard. The reason I like to look at separation and then special teams as well is because these are crucial phases of the game that illustrate fundamental truths about your football team. If you can't stop the run, you are not going to have any fun. I couldn't help myself. Every time I say stop the run, I think about saying you can't have any fun. That was coined by Arden Key, by the way, former 49ers defensive lineman back in 2021. But if you can't stop the run, you're not a serious team because you can't control a game. No matter how good your DBs are, no matter how good your pass rushers are, no matter how good your QB is, if you cannot stop the run, you will be run off the field. Just ask the Green Bay Packers in 2019 in the NFC Championship game. They had Aaron Rodgers. They had a lot of good players on that team. 49ers ran them out the building. They didn't even have to throw the ball. And the 49ers just asked last year's 49ers. They got run out of the building because they couldn't stop the run. Nothing else will happen. You are not a serious team if you can't stop the run. There's no way you will ever win a Super Bowl when you rank number 29 in running efficiency. Conversely, if you cannot run the football when you need a yard or two, and the 49ers ranked second to last in that regard last year. If you can't do that, if you're number 31, I don't think you're a serious football team. That's something that must be addressed. So the trenches on both sides are obviously points of needed improvement for the 49ers. Letting Aaron Banks, the below average left guard by almost every metric this past season, go. Good for him. He made his $19.2 million a year from the Green Bay Packers, but that could be addition by subtraction considering the fact that Ben Barch played better than he did over those 65 snaps in 2024. That is a move by attrition that the 49ers feel can help number 2. Now, a lot of people saying, well, they should have also gotten a center. Well, I thought that could be the rising tide that lifts all boats, but apparently they believe that Jake Brendel maybe they thought Aaron Banks was the biggest problem. Apparently they think that Jake Brendel with Ben Barch next to him and with Dominick taking the next stride in 2025 will help. Or the 49ers have something big in store. Maybe they pick a tackle and Colton Mitkevitz swings inside to one of the guard positions. And they believe that's how the tide will rise to lift all boats. Either way, it's number 2 that the 49ers should be focused on. Number 1 is what I'm focused on today when I'm talking about Cleveland releasing Dalvin Tomlinson. We're going to go back to that, right? 2023, week 6 at Cleveland, the 49ers could not run the ball to save their lives. And I know for a fact that the coaching staff left that game extremely impressed with Dalvin Tomlinson on the other side. I mean, this goes hand in hand, right? We look at the struggles and run defense for the 49ers. And now we're talking about somebody like Dalvin Tomlinson potentially helping there. And then we talk about the struggles in the short yardage run game. Well, somebody that can help the run defense struggles completely shut down the short yardage run game. When it was Dalvin Tomlinson against Jake Brendel and Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford in 2023, the advantage went to Dalvin Tomlinson. That's why I think that a veteran, somebody they could highlight in yellow as a foundational piece of that defensive tackle position would be of massive, massive benefit to the 49ers because it would directly help one of those areas of concerning weakness. The 49ers tried to sign Javon Hargrave after the 2022 season, but he wasn't a good run defender. And I understand why they did it at the time. We talked, I mean, everybody was excited when they did it at the time because he was a really good pass rusher and the team had no interior pass rush in 2022. That was the biggest weakness of the football team the year that they lost to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. They got 3 total sacks all season out of their interior defensive linemen. So they went out and they got the most expensive defensive tackle on the market because he was the best available pass rusher on the market. But that had a downside that I think wasn't publicized enough at the time. I think we probably should have been talking about it more because the Eagles weren't all that great against the run in 2022. Javon Hargrave wasn't great against the run, and the run defense started eroding. They didn't have that DJ Jones, Eric Armstead pairing in the middle anymore. And then Hargrave in 2024 got hurt in week 3. He was fine rushing the passer, but the run defense fell all the way to number 29. Somebody like Dalvin Tomlinson, I go back to the game against Cleveland, week 6, 2023. He lived in the 49ers backfield. And that wasn't the first time he's lived in the 49ers backfield. He was with Minnesota in 2021, but I think he missed the game due to COVID in 2021. Lo and behold, the 49ers won. No Dalvin Tomlinson on the other side. That was a big break. Prior to that, he was with the New York Giants and gave the 49ers a whole heck of a lot of trouble when they played the Giants in 2020. So I think Dalvin's a really good player. I think he's available. I would urge the 49ers to try to get a war horse like that right in the middle of that defensive line, because then that sets things up for the draft. Then you could draft all the talent you want for the defensive line. You could turn into the Eagles, right, if you draft it well. But when I talk about veteran guidance, when I talk about building a roster, I understand everything that the 49ers are doing. And I think that a very appropriate next step for San Francisco would be to add a line of yellow at the defensive tackle position. I think it would be great if they added something to the interior of the offensive line. I just don't see how they do it at this point. Now, maybe you draft Armand Membu and you've got 2 shades of yellow on both exteriors of the line. I guess that would do the trick too. But, with the 49ers, you just want to find more core foundational pieces as you continue to build on a cost-efficient basis around them. I think that is the gist of what San Francisco should be trying to do. All right, I'm going to go grill some burgers in a little bit, but I'm ready to answer a couple of questions. Mike says, you want your center to be the smartest person on the field since he handles protection calls. Absolutely. That's been a truth of the 49ers ever since the mid-90s with Bart Oates and then Chris Dahlman, Drew Dahlman's dad. Then you go to the Shanahan system with Alex Mack. He came over to the 49ers, Weston Richburg in 2018. And don't get me wrong, I think that they've seen some good stuff over the years here from Jake Brendel. I just think that the play has diminished since his first season as the starter in 2022. George saying that they're not going to trade Ayuk because nobody's going to want to trade for him. I think that's probably the reality. That's why it's unlikely. So the best path forward, if we're talking strategy for the 49ers, is likely to let Ayuk heal, come back, play for them in 2025, and hope that he reemerges as a guy they could count as the core player at receiver, because he is the player with the most talent in that receiving room. The most natural talent belongs to Brandon Ayuk. I know that he fell out of grace over last season, but he's still under contract. He's still with the team. Yes, they're interested in shipping him off. No, it may not be possible. Well, if they can get this right here, Brandon Ayuk can look like this, all of a sudden this roster has a big question taken care of. Anyway, I got to shade him again with the injury designation. It's too bad. Everybody, thanks for watching. One more time, let me remind you that Cleveland released Dalvin Tomlinson today. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. A lot of you watching again. I'll be with you if the 49ers make a move.